Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Play the Tape. I am your host, Derek J. Fields. Listen, we have a remarkable guest coming on today. This episode, all my guests are remarkable. I say that all the time, but it's true. First and foremost, I have to do this full disclaimer. I am not a licensed clinical social worker, health and mental health, substance use counselor, a certified drug alcohol counselor. I am not. I do have people like that to come on the show. And I have someone like that today on the show that has her certifications and different things, but we'll get to that in just a second. I always want to give that disclaimer. But what Play the Tape is a platform of community support, advocacy for those who suffer from mental health conditions, substance use, and we always focus on recover, sharing our experience, strength, and hope for those that are in need. So my guest today is Melinda Sampson. She is a 2009 graduate of ECU University with her bachelor's in arts and communication. She began her career in journalism back in 2011 with the Cook Communication LLC. I wanted to make sure I got that right. It's Cook. Okay. With Cook
Absolutely.
Communication LLC, becoming the editor of a weekly newspaper located in Belhaven, North Carolina. In 2013, she became an associate editor for a biweekly newspaper in Williamston, North Carolina. And by 2014, she became the assistant editor at a daily newspaper in Goldsboro, North Carolina. Ms. Sampson became the community outreach coordinator for North Carolina Stop Human Trafficking in June of 2018. She is certified in North Carolina Victims Service Practitioner, graduate of the Pitt County Greenville Leadership Institute, and the recipient of the 2021 ECU 40 Under 40. She is the co-host of PC Brace, which is a podcast of an offshoot of the Pitt County Brace Collaborative, which we'll get more into about Brace in a little bit. I'm going to share some information about that. The podcast is designed to listeners in the community with resources to improve mental health, to foster resilience, and normalize conversations around mental health, sexual abuse, substance use disorder, therapeutic resources, and self-care. Now, I know I know that's a lot and that's a mouthful, and that's a good chunk. She gave me some information about bracing, and I was on the podcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, a PC Brace, and you're like, okay, Derek, what is brace? So I'll give you a little background on what brace is, and Miss Sampson, Miss Melinda can expand on that in a little bit throughout her story and her testimony. So brace is building resilience and courage to excel. It was formed in 2018 as a community response to address adverse childhood experiences and trauma in Pitt County. Brace operates as a collaborative referral network to reduce ACEs in Pitt County and increase resilience in children. Brace includes members of law enforcement, social service agencies, mental health practices, child providers, the health department, physicians, officers, and university researchers. So, and my guest today, none other than Melinda Sampson. Listen, I thank you for being here. I'm so honored that you're here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story, how you grew in all your different positions that got you to what you do now in the community of Pitt County and the surrounding areas when it comes to PC Brace. So without further ado, my guest, Melinda Sampson.
Thank you, Derek. I appreciate being here today. The story about how I got here it's definitely not a straight line. Definitely not at all. As a matter of fact, I went from journalism to advocacy work with NC Stop Human Trafficking, which is a big jump from one to the other.
Right.
In a nutshell, I went to East Carolina University originally and I went into business. And for the only reason I went into business at East Carolina University was because I came from a background that was just I didn't have a lot of money. And so I wanted initially, after I graduated high school, to be financially successful, which makes the story even more kind of funny when you think about it.
Right.
Because, working for nonprofits, there's no profit to be had here, right?
Right.
But anyway, I'll get back to, how I shifted into communication at ECU. I realized, and it took less than a year. But again, you got to go by the semesters. So it took less than a year for me to realize business really wasn't my jam.
Why communications? Why communications transition into journalism?
Such a good question. What I really wanted to do was tell the truth.
Okay,
And the best way to
I
I
can
could think to
respect
do
that.
that,
Yeah,
the
I'm
best
sorry.
way I could think to do that would be going into journalism. One of my inspirations was Ruth Gruber, who was one of the first female journalists to ever be a foreign correspondent, and she covered issues like the Holocaust and World War II and all kinds of things that, and like she went into it and she just didn't care. She said, I'm going to do this. And so my initial switching over from business to communication was, well, business isn't my thing. And if my journey in life is not to be, not to be rich, then so be it. I've got to do this, right? I have
Right.
got to do this because, we're all compelled, I think, in some ways to, I don't know, follow your heart, maybe follow some sort of guiding principle that you have. I think we all are born with that, and so I couldn't ignore that anymore. So I went into communication, and then I got my degree in journalism. I graduated with my bachelor's of arts, so I can. It's not just it's not journalism that I know about communication. I know all kinds of ways to communicate with people, which took me a long way, really. Not only in work, but in everyday life, because communication is such a valuable skill to have. If to be a good communicator, it means you can be good at many other things.
Right.
So I took what I learned. Finally, I graduated during the recession. Been through a lot here, Derek.
That's a lot. Yeah, that is a lot. Like you had to transition it. Oh, it's a recession. Oh, come on,
Yeah,
Melinda.
I know exactly. I was like, okay, well, but to be very clear, I learned the most about the work I do right now through the filler work that I did before I was able to get a career in journalism. I worked at gas stations for a couple of years and the night shifts and stuff. So from there at the gas stations, like if you're working at a convenience store, the only thing you have to really do is talk to people and
Right.
them out. You might as well have a positive attitude about it. And so that's how I went into doing it. I actually didn't mind working at a convenience store. I liked it a lot. I met a lot of great people. I also met a lot of not so great people, but that's the nature of everything, right? But
Yes.
anyway, I don't want to sidetrack on that one. I can't tell you how many skills I actually learned how many skills I learned working at a convenience store helped me in communicating with people.
Yeah, like
It was just uncanny out.
yeah, with the different people, with the different personalities that you would see come into the convenience store, even bosses, coworkers, and then just
Oh yeah.
customers that you have to interact with daily. That customers always right. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Well, I
yeah,
didn't I didn't do that. I didn't do that customer always right thing very well. But I mean,
me.
you see some of the people that come into convenience stores, especially if you're working the night shift, they're like some of them are at their worst. And
Yes.
so, instead of making it worse, I learned how to make it just one exchange a little better for that person, right? And
Hmm.
that really did matter to me, even though it's very small in the big scheme of things. But so I graduated, got a job at a convenience store, which I really did like. But then I finally landed a job in journalism, and I worked in journalism for 7 years. I loved it. I can't lie. I loved it so much. And then it was really a good fit for me. I liked to write because it was print. I was working at
Hmm.
newspapers. So I enjoy writing. I enjoy talking to people, getting to know them. And it is an honor of a lifetime for somebody to tell you a small part of their life story. They agree to do that, then that is your honor. And you have to do them justice.
I agree. I agree.
And you have to tell the truth all the time. And the idea of having to tell the truth, your job is to tell the truth all the time. It's the easiest and the hardest thing to do. So, go ahead.
No, I was agreeing with you in the fact that it is easy and hard because you have to see where you as a person and then as a business of self, you have to see, okay, where can I go and this skill is looked at as being valuable.
Hmm.
And I think that's something that I'm learning in this business of play the tape and the podcast and being of Derek, hey, I want to tell the truth about myself, about my story, about my experiences that could help someone that doesn't, that are maybe heading towards that way, that, oh, let me stop, let me turn back, or is in it. And okay, that's a person that got out. Let me see how they did it and take what I can and
Mhm.
and market that to some degree that can help people. So I'm with you when it comes to telling the truth is a blessing and a curse at the same time. Absolutely.
It absolutely is. The and let's just be clear. And I don't, everybody lies. I would be telling a lie if I told you everybody told the truth all the time. I would be telling you a lie if I told you I've never lied. That's ridiculous. Everybody lies. And I might be painting that with a broad brush. There may be somebody out there who's never told a lie, but I can't say I haven't. So I understand the desire to not tell the truth sometimes. That's why it's oftentimes the hardest thing to do. It's the easiest in the long run, but at the time it's very difficult. And not only is telling the truth difficult to other people, it's also difficult for yourself. When you have to be honest with yourself, that's the hardest. I feel like that's the hardest time to be honest, is when you have got to be honest with yourself and be faced with the things about yourself that you need to work on. Because we all want to be our best self. We're all out here doing our best, right?
Right.
But when it finally comes a time to be honest with yourself about the circumstances that have made you unhappy, and sometimes it is circumstantial, you couldn't help that. But
True.
sometimes there are choices that were made that got you there. And you have to look at that sometimes and be as honest with yourself as possible to right the ship in your life.
I think that reflection of self or taking a look in the mirror, because change always starts with the person in the mirror. And then that is, I agree, is some of the hardest truth to tell yourself, because we can lie to ourselves and believe that lie and then go out there and manifest that lie, meaning that, okay, I've told myself this, I'm walking in it, but it's a lie. You lied to yourself. Now you have other people believing in a lie that is
Mm-hmm.
that's not doing them that's doing them a disservice. So I know part of my recovery journey is the inventory, the turning that mirror on self and be like, okay, Derek, what was good today and what was not so good today? So I agree with you about turning that mirror on self. And that took a long time to get comfortable with doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, I do know. Absolutely. I spent a long time. I don't get me wrong. I love being a journalist, but I spent a long time, years in journalism when I was done, because I did not. I didn't want to admit that this wasn't for me anymore,
it
because
took,
I had worked so long to get to where I was, that to go back and realize that some of the work that you were doing isn't what you're meant to do. Um,
how did you deal with that? Because I think that's interesting, because I think a lot of us go through that. I'm going through that right now with my business. Is, man, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Because I want to give back. I want to be of service. I want to be like Melinda. I know in this healthcare, mental health, substance use, recovery, peer support, counseling, coordinator, it's it's not, you're not going to be rich. You won't be rich monetarily, but spiritually, knowing that you could change a life or giving resources to lead someone to change their life is very impactful. So how did you, in journalism for 7 years, come to the realization this ain't it either, and then deal with that truth?
well, I started in journalism, and there's something about getting a byline, right? I was all about me.
Yeah. Yep.
I was all about getting that byline. I can't lie. Like, I mean, let's be real.
Right.
I was all about getting the byline. I was all about seeing my name in print. I was all about guiding the news coverage. I was about telling the stories and telling other people how to tell the stories. Like, I was about it. And then one day I'm out and doing a story, and it wasn't just it wasn't going to be a heavy story. It was just going to be like the day in the life of farm workers, right? And then I was in doing interviews. Well, I don't speak Spanish. People were translating for me, but I was talking to these gentlemen out here in tobacco fields doing farm work, and I realized that the stories they were telling me were terrible. I mean, they were living in terrible conditions. They couldn't leave, or they said they couldn't leave. People who worked with them when we came up, like, fled. They didn't want to be around us, which, I mean, I understand to an extent, sure, but to just completely scatter, it was just very strange, and their living conditions were horrible too. And so these men who just wanted to work like we all do, just wanted to provide for their families, were stuck here being treated really badly, and I could not shake their stories. Like, I couldn't stop thinking about them. I realized it was human trafficking. I took a human trafficking 101 with this organization as a journalist, crazy enough to figure out what I had seen. And for a couple years after those interviews, that's the only thing I thought about. The whole time I'm writing other stories, I'm doing my job, I'm doing other things, and the whole time I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to be here anymore. There's this other thing that's calling me. And to figure out what that was, I wasn't sure, right, for a while, but it's that feeling of I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And I feel like some people kind of have that feeling. They understand what I'm talking about, and some people aren't really sure, which I get. When I describe it, some people are like, yeah, I get that. And then some folks are like, I'm not really sure what you mean by I'm not supposed to be here anymore. But when you're not, when you're out of place, like, when you're home, and when you're out of place.
Yes,
So I was out of place.
I agree with that. It's amazing that you shared that with me, because when I think of, and this is the ignorance on my part, when I think of human trafficking, I don't think about workers, farm workers, or people coming in to do manual labor. I think of on the aspect of escorting or sexual
Sure.
workers. Right. I never thought about it on the other side of people coming into the country or to get work to provide for their family, and they're being taken advantage of on that side. That just blew my mind. I never knew it encompassed all of that. Like, it's more to it than people think.
Oh yeah, it absolutely, and it was more to it than I thought at the time. I mean, I took the 101, and then it all clicked together. Like, it all fell into place. And not only did it all fall into place around labor trafficking, because that's what that was, but also sex trafficking. I had done stories in the past that it was the same. It was sex trafficking. It was what it looked like was sex trafficking at the time. I didn't know what it was, though. I thought it was, a normal thing. Well, not necessarily normal, but a sad story. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so when you, like, I guess when you know better, you're supposed to do better. So then I knew better, but I didn't really want to do better. I really just wanted to be comfortable in my comfortable spot. And I just wanted to keep doing what I was doing. I knew how to write a story. I knew how to work in newspapers. I knew how to do all that. I did not want to learn how to do anything else. But then I guess one day I was just like, this isn't enough. And my life's too short to not have enough.
Were you ever compelled to write those stories? Did you ever write those stories at that time?
Yeah, I did. They never got printed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, there are politics in newspapers.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah, I understand that. I get that. I'm just saying wow, because I know that there's politics, bureaucracy, and red tape that comes with sharing that type of information to the public, to the masses. Right. And some editors and publications aren't ready for that to be shared or shine a light on just yet. So I get you when you say that. And that's why I said wow, because I felt like you did your due diligence and you was trying to, and that's maybe another reason if and I don't want to assume you think that may be another reason why you didn't, it wasn't where you needed to be, because you felt like, man, these people are people going through something horrific and no one cares to hear their story. Something has to be done.
It was a huge disappointment for me personally, because I went into journalism to be able to tell the truth. And now had that story gotten printed, maybe this would be a whole different, maybe I wouldn't be here today. Maybe I'd still be a journalist right now. I don't know, but that's not what happened.
Right.
I was hugely disappointed with the decision on that. And again, I'm not here to judge that decision or anybody else for it, but I knew just something changed. I think I would say my heart kind of cracked wide open, right? And so things change you. And so I changed. And though I did love to chase that byline, and I still, it still is a nice thing for me, right?
Right.
It wasn't enough anymore. It just wasn't enough. And one day I just asked Pam if she wanted to hire me,
Okay.
which I had no credentialing. But she did. She took a chance on me.
That's good. That's
Yeah.
good. You had credibility. You have credibility. I believe you did. 7 years of journalism, understanding, getting to understand what life is and stories that are not being put out there that have a adverse effect on people. Um, I think is important to get you, like you said, to where you are now. So, from the transition of communications into journalism, and how did the nonprofit come about? How did Brace come about? The collaborative.
Well, when I got hired at NC Stop Human Trafficking, the organization itself had been around for a little bit more than 5 years at the time I got hired here. So NC Stop Human Trafficking just celebrated their 10-year anniversary in 2020.
Awesome. Awesome.
So yeah, I've been here for about 5 years. When I first came on to NC Stop Human Trafficking, I was learning about, because I just had a basic understanding of violence and how a person who experiences violence, whether it be physical or sexual violence, how it affects them in the long run. But also, I was learning about what leads to a person ending up in a trafficking situation. How do people get here? Which is always a very interesting thing to learn about. How do people get where they get? What
Would you
happened?
would you mind sharing a little bit of that if you can?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So how people are exploited, everybody's life is different and every trafficking situation is different, but the vulnerabilities around that are oftentimes sexual abuse in childhood, or just physical abuse in childhood, which actually sexual abuse in childhood is a predictor of whether they'll be sexually exploited through sex trafficking later, which is alarming. And that's one of the ACE adverse childhood experiences. That's one of them, sexual abuse. But there are other things attached to somebody's vulnerability to being trafficked as well. Do they live in poverty? Um, are they foreign-born nationals? Right? If you're talking about the U.S.,
Mm-hmm.
do they have a history of child sexual abuse? Are they coming from a foster care? Are they coming from the foster care system or child protective services or group homes? Did they have any kind of safety net in their youth or in their in their young life or in their youth? There's just a lot of vulnerabilities that lead to people being exploited, and all those vulnerabilities, if we got rid of them one by one systematically, then there would be no victim to trafficker pipeline. There wouldn't be so many victims in that pipeline.
So
So
so Brace comes in and tries to intervene.
what happens, and which this is what the beautiful thing about Brace, not
Okay.
only does the interest that I have at NC Stop Human Trafficking to be participating in the collaborative, the podcast with Bonnie Jean Curris at your Children's Advocacy Center. What Brace does is actually primary prevention of violence in the community. Because when you are able to counteract adverse childhood experiences, not only counteract them, but prevent them altogether,
Mm-hmm.
you are preventing huge vulnerabilities from occurring later in life. So you're creating a population that's their mental health is stronger, their stability is stronger, there's the idea of security and safety is stronger. And when they are hit with a setback, which we all get, right? We all get hit with
Yes.
things we didn't expect. We all go through something, no matter if we've had a charmed childhood or not. We've all gone through something, and we're not going to come out of this life without having gone through something bad. So what Brace does is tries to teach people, the community, what it's like to be truly connected, and also what it's like to experience terrible things, but find avenues to come out on the other side. Does that make sense?
It does. When you say
Okay.
that, is it better for to prevent, or if you can, because sometimes prevention is a little tricky. Is it more to catch someone as they are young, or as a child? So for instance, for me, example, for me, I speak about me. My ACE score would be physical abuse, and I saw
Mhm.
this from my father towards my mother, towards myself, towards my brother, before he turned his life around, and God intervened, and he got the help that he needed, and he's a much that's I love my dad, but at that time growing up, he was very hard and
Mhm.
stern because of his ACE score of being uh
Right.
not being in being adopted and being left behind by his mother and his father. So it's a trickle down effect that happens, inherent effect, like, okay, from the grandparent to parent to child, is hereditary. Is there a way to, of course, prevent, but is it better to, let me catch Derek when he's about 10 or 11? Is it better then because it's harder
Mhm.
to prevent? Is it better to catch me at a 10 or 11, be like, okay, Derek, this is what is going on. This is your A score. You have resources to talk about it. Would it be better to catch me then, or how does that work if I'm asking that correctly?
That's a really good question, and I can't really answer that until I couldn't answer that. I don't know how to answer the question, but I do know this. I have a really high A score myself, and because of that, as an adult, I didn't realize that my reactions to certain things was because I wasn't even connecting anything to anything. I was like, that's the past. We're moving on. Let's go forward. Right. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's all in us, right? It's all in us. So as an adult, I was still operating in a very protective way towards myself. Like I was just going to take care of myself. I was going to wrap myself in my own armor and my own protection, which limited the connections I was able to get outside myself. I didn't, you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to
Yes.
have the strong relationships that you need to have to be happiness is not something that's kind of fleeting, but to have
Yes.
joy, right?
Joy. Yes. Joy.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
have joy. And it took me until honestly I started working at NC Stop Human Trafficking and working with the community educators at Teddy Bear Children's Advocacy Center and working with Brace. For me as an adult in a service, well, not a service provider, as an adult, but an advocate myself, to realize that my actions were a result of this. And so from there, I've changed so much about my, and I mean, that was 5 years ago, right?
Right.
That's a recent thing. So I've changed so much about how I respond to things and how I connect. And I did that as an adult. I now, would I have liked to known earlier? Probably. I would probably have a lot more friends now. Probably wouldn't have made the,
Me too.
yeah, probably wouldn't have made the mistakes that I had made. I probably would have been so much more open and would have had more experiences with other people that I didn't pursue
But you know what,
because
Melinda? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
because of that. Yeah.
No, what I'm hearing is hope, and that's what play the tape is about. That hope that Melinda just talked about is we all. I have a high A score. Melinda has
Mhm.
a high A score. Most people have a high A score
Mhm.
in the United States and around the world, because, like you said, no one escapes trauma freely. You just things are going to happen. Trials and tribulations, grief, loss, death, things are going to happen that you're going to experience some type of trauma. But there is a point where these resources are here to help you evaluate that trauma and get the tools and resources you need to learn behaviors and skills to
Mhm.
become a better individual, a more successful individual moving forward. I love that you said that hey, even 5 years ago, I'm better now than I was 5 years ago because of what I've learned and where I'm
Oh
at
yeah.
now. And I appreciate that. So, what is an A score? Because we've been talking about that. So,
Oh well. An A score is a list of questions from, and it was from the Kaiser Institute. I think that's the name of
mm-hmm,
the organization, but it was from a study done. Actually, the study began on obesity. They could not figure out why some people were losing weight and then gaining it back, and then losing the weight and then gaining it back. So what the researchers actually did was connect the up and down weights of these research participants
mm-hmm,
to childhood traumas. the especially well, it was specific to sexual abuse for the weight in women, and which makes sense if you understand childhood sexual abuse, right?
Yes.
So they lost the weight, but they kept gaining weight back as a protective, as a mechanism of protection for themselves, but also as a mechanism of comfort. Because when they get triggered, where do they go? They go for their comfort foods.
Right.
When they lose weight, they're not comfortable anymore. They don't feel safe, so they gain it back. That a study on obesity, which is wild to me, a study on obesity results in what we have today as the Adverse Childhood Experiences questionnaire, where it's a list of 10 questions that ask like questions like, did you experience physical abuse in your home but before the age of 18? Did you witness one parent being abused in your home before the age of 18? And if you, the more yeses you have, the higher your ACE score is, or adverse childhood experience score is. And they took it further and said, well, people with high adverse childhood experiences scores often develop substance use disorders in adulthood. They often are more likely to have heart attacks and to develop diabetes. They often experience high levels of depression. They're more likely to go to jail or prison. So they connected the ACE score to outcomes in as for adults, which is like, if you've ever been through something as children, and honestly, we all have these
Mm-hmm.
high ACE scored stuff. Most kids have. I mean, most adults can, if they go take the survey, will have a one, at least a one score, right?
Right. Right.
There's no, again, you're not getting out of this life unscathed. It's just not going to happen. But the higher the ACE score, the more health issues you're going to have later in life. That's what the study said. So then we went back, and that's negative. That's a downer, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't stop there. They said, but we see that, but there are ways that we can counteract what you've been through to make your outcomes better. And that kind of counteracting what you've been through to make your outcomes better, the idea of developing community resilience, and that community resilience model is where Brace sits. That's where they are. You're going to go through something. We all are going to go through something, but this is how it doesn't have to um, shape your whole life.
How does Brace, or either a Pitt or PC Brace, which is Pitt County Brace, how do y'all build or increase that resilience in children, or early adults, or even older adults like you and me? How
Mhm.
does that, how do you implement that in the community? Because I'm very curious on what that looks like.
Well, that's a good question. I feel like I might not be the best person to answer that question because I don't handle the event coordination, but I will say what Brace has already done.
Mm-hmm.
They had wellness at Wildwood, so they invited the community to come out to look at the resources available that help develop resiliency in the community. And the wellness at Wildwood, we did participate. NC Stop Human Trafficking was participatory in that, and they had kids activities, uh, service providers there to talk to parents about, if this happens, we have this and this, to like just help them get connected to people that can help them if they ever need it. Because honestly, the biggest barrier to getting the help you need is not knowing where the help is, or
Right.
if it's even out there. So wellness at Wildwood was great, but Brace also offers community resilience model trainings. They do the resilience documentary screening through Teddy Bear Children's Advocacy Center. And there are so many professionals at the table who work in schools and work as counselors and work in public health and in social work. They're all at the table saying, we can do this, this, and this, and this, and this would make everything. This would change some things. And when you get everybody in one room who wants the same thing, which is a stronger response to trauma, a more resilient community, then it happens. It's
Right.
just a longer process. It took us a long time to get here, and it's going to take a long time for us to correct it. Does that make sense?
It does. So
Yeah.
what do you do in your current role right now? If you could explain that, elaborate on what you do, what Melinda does.
Well, as I do with most things, do the podcast PC Brace
Mm-hmm.
with Bonnie Jean Curris. And so what we do on that podcast is we invite people who are working in the community to develop resilience to come in and talk a little bit about what they're doing, what events that they're having. And then we connect the dots for our listeners as to why this is important. Why, because you came on last month,
Mm-hmm.
why is talking about mental health and mental illness, why do we even need to talk about it? Because if we don't talk about mental illness or mental health, then the people who need the help aren't going to feel safe enough to come get it.
Right.
So, what PC Brace a podcast does is normalize conversations that are hard to have. If you can hear people talking about things that are hard to talk about, it makes you more comfortable with talking about it. And if you've lived through it, if you're living through it now, it's going to make you more comfortable with asking for help when you need it. So that's the whole reason behind the PC Brace podcast. And of course, that is an offshoot of the big Brace, which is
Mm-hmm.
building resilience and courage to excel. That's like a small communication arm of that collaborative. So what I do mostly with Brace is that podcast. Also, handle a little bit of the social media, and I really just promote it as much as I can at different community events and collaboratives and meetings too. So, but there are other people that work at Brace, like that work with Brace, like Kia Glosson at Teddy Bear Children's Advocacy Center can be a wonderful person to learn like the in-depth details about what Brace is doing and the
Mm-hmm.
impacts they're having, because I'm not privy to the impacts. I know there are great impacts they're causing great things to happen and really normalizing this conversation that needs to be had.
Right.
But they would definitely be the ones to talk to if you want to know the in-depth information about the impact and where the future they want to have for the collaborative.
Absolutely. Um, we got about 20 minutes. I want to talk about real quick, Melinda, is your your growth in the 5 years of you being there. How has that impacted you mentally and stabilized your mental health working in such a community that embraces resilience, that embraces normalizing the talk of uncomfortable conversations? How have you grown in that? Because you spoke about it earlier, but I would love for you to, I want people to hear your hope and how what you do now and everything that you've learned so far has gave you more mental stability. Nothing is perfect. We're never going to say anything is perfect. We can never be perfect, but we can be in pursuit. We can be better than we were yesterday. So
Hmm.
how has doing this improved your mental stability?
I'm gonna tell you one thing, Derek. You should have met me 5 years ago. Like you wouldn't. I mean, you gotta laugh about it. I mean, you really
You
did.
do. You got to. Like, I love laughter. I love humor. So,
Because 5 years ago, I mean, and again, I'm not saying that I'm in any way, fixed, but
right.
5 years ago, um, I was the only emotion I knew how to register was mad. That's the only thing I knew how to. That's the only thing I knew. I'm mad. That's it. Are you sad? No, I'm mad. I'm mad. Did that hurt your feelings? No, that made me angry.
You
No,
keep asking me about it, it's making me more
it's
angry.
making me more mad. That's where I was 5 years ago, right? That's
Right.
literally the. If anybody's like was asking me, I'm like, it was either like I'm doing good or no, I'm mad. That's it. That's all I had. Not much of a range there, right?
Right.
But fast forward to 5 years from now, and Brace as a professional helped me not only understand myself more, but it also helped me understand the nature of violence more. Because, as we look at victims, I understand more how they got to where they are. Not that it was a stretch for me to understand the victimization, but now I understand perpetration too a lot better. Because if the only thing I could understand about myself 5 years ago was I'm all right or I'm mad,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's, you know what I'm saying?
Now
Like,
you un-
that's not,
now you understand why you were mad.
yes, exactly. Thank you. So now, um, I've got to say, I've got a lot more joy in my life. Like, I can say that, and I can say I'm feeling happy right now, but I'm always going to say happiness is fleeting, right?
It
Because
is.
it
It is.
is.
I agree. It is.
You can be happy right now because that you got something on sale, and then Then you forget about it the next day. But what we're talking about, what I'm talking about, is way more joyful, and which is crazy. I don't want to say crazy. It's wild to think about the work I do. Human trafficking is just terrible, and
Yeah.
oftentimes the outcomes aren't good. How can you possibly be joyful? Of course you can be, because you hold on to the impact you do make, and that's what Brace talks about: holding on to the wins.
Looking at it, looking at the blessings and
Uh-huh.
the gratefulness, because um, I'm one of the co-facilitators with NAMI at National Alliance on Mental Illness. Is one of the co-facilitators of our connection group that we do every second Tuesday at the Covenant Church in Winterville in Greenville, North Carolina. And you, as a facilitator, it's not therapy or counseling. We can't do that. We have to stick to the NAMI model. But I also advocate for, like you, what you said. What are you thankful for?
Right.
What brings you joy? What is that glass that is half full? We can always focus on what's not in the glass, but let's turn the view on what's in the glass.
Hmm.
Oh, I forgot about what was in the glass. Right. Because
Right.
we always take time to focus on what's not in the glass. Need to take more time to focus on what's in the glass, and how what's in the glass is that's that joy.
Hmm.
That's the joy you hold on to when we start focusing on what's not in the glass, or when we're focusing on, okay, like you said, why I'm mad, for me, why I'm depressed, why I have this bitterness,
Hmm.
so
Yeah.
I felt that's fantastic. I'm learning so much, and I definitely would love to reach out to more about and learn more about Brace. This is the first time when I was on your podcast, and as a representative of NAMI and myself, this is the first time I did my research on Brace, and I want to know more about it. I want to be more involved in it, because I never thought about the human trafficking side of
Hmm.
mental health or
Yeah.
mental illness. And I've always, okay, you have a diagnosis, or then substance use, because that's what I saw. That's what I was. That's how my ACE scores affected me, was the mental health and the substance use. And then
Hmm.
there was um, addiction to pornography and those types of things too. So I never thought about the human trafficking side, and how, hey, those people uh, need help just as much as substance use, just as much someone with schizophrenia or bipolar 1 or bipolar 2. They
Oh,
need,
well, yeah. They go through like a human trafficking experience is very, very violent. They've
yeah.
gone through a lot. And if they are able to successfully exit a trafficking experience, they are suffering from an average of 10 psychological issues at one time.
Whew, yeah.
So the availability of mental health services in the community is incredible. And if they can have, when you're just talking about victimization alone, if they can have some like community support, and brace partners do offer community support, it would definitely change the game. But if you look even before the victimization began, where was a point where somebody could have come in and been like, hey,
Mm,
are you okay?
no, okay.
Here's
Yes.
something I can help you with.
Right.
Do you need something?
But
Because
how
at
do
the
you,
end of the day, we all need something, and a trafficker is going to provide the victim with what they need at the time.
and
If
maybe
somebody else can do it, that would be great.
true. And I'm with you. And I would love to have you back on with other people, with other guests from the organization. And maybe you can answer this, and maybe not. Maybe this is a question for another time, because I would love to have you back on. I always tell
Mhm.
my guests, I love I because it's hard to get everything in an hour.
Oh
And
yeah.
there's so much information, so much good content, because I had you talking just got me a question. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off or anything or interrupt. It just, my mind ain't so good like it used to be.
You're doing great.
Thank you. Thank you. And I tell people that, I'm like, man, TBI and the scarring and all the drug use, see, it just left me. So you said, how can we get in early and go back and see, hey, could somebody come in and be like, hey, are you okay? What you need? What are you going through?
Mhm.
How do you detect that? That's a hard detector in this. it's hard for mental health and substance use, but to detect where can I come in for human trafficking, whoo, that's I wouldn't
That
even know where to begin.
you wouldn't. That's where the value of brace really is.
Okay.
Because what they're really doing at the end of the day, and I can talk about, connecting people to resources and all that stuff, which sounds good and it's perfect. But at the end of the day, what brace does encourage community wide
Hmm.
is to treat people like they're humans on a basic human level. And that's what's so beautiful about it. When you've got a collaborative of people who want to come together and build connections, personal connections. Connection is everything in life, is everything in a person. We are all built to be social creatures. And the nature of human trafficking is that person has no connections. The trafficker comes in and is a connection for them. What Brace does is encourages building connections with young people, adults, older adults, seniors alike, and bringing a whole community together. Like I honestly believe we should be, and treat each other like we all matter to each other because we do.
Absolutely. We
You know what
do.
I'm saying? And
Yes.
that's what Brace. I mean, though that's not like the social work terms, that's not the public health terms. If you look at it like a person, which is how I see Brace. I'm not a public health
Humanity.
person. I'm not a social worker, a
Yeah,
licensed
but
social worker. I see it as they,
humanity.
yeah,
Have humanity and empathy for
uh-huh,
someone, because treat them how you want to be treated. You won't want nobody to come in and do that to you or a family member that you love.
right.
Right. Have
That's
that
exactly
humanity. Yeah.
have the recognizing the humanity in other people,
Yes. Absolutely.
even the people that are making so many mistakes.
Yes. Um, man, I'm so okay. Is because I know there. So we're coming into the mental health. We're coming into the substance use. Those things are getting more normalized. I
Mhm.
think when it comes to the human trafficking part, that one is I guess it's really hard for someone to come in and like you said, survive that and be like, hey, this is my background. This
Yeah.
is what I've been through. And it comes with a whole lot more stigma
Oh yeah.
than I think the other two. Not minimalizing the other two, because I've been a part of both, but I've never been, I'm trying to educate myself on the human trafficking part because I've never experienced that to to that degree. I've never dealt with that. And I don't want to just brush over it. Like, man, that has to be hard. Because I know it was hard for me admitting that I was an addict. It was
Mhm.
hard for me to deal with the night terrors and the PTSD and the cold sweats of losing brothers and sisters in the battlefield and two tours and trying to push that down and what I went through as a child. So I can imagine. I can't imagine. I can have sympathy. I couldn't even empathize with what a person like that going through to have that conversation normalized, because now we're just moving forward with the mental health and substance use. Whew. Pray for them. I pray for everyone, but I pray for them. Um,
Absolutely. Well, a lot of human trafficking victimization does look like substance use disorders, mental
mhm.
health on top of all of that is the abuse, right?
Right,
That they're still having to live through. I mean, if they leave the experience, then they're going to have to work to recover from the substance use disorder and treat their mental health issues. But it's all about leaving the abuse before that can happen. I
right.
hope that makes sense.
It does, because you have
Yeah.
to get through the mental health and substance use before you can even tackle the human trafficking experience that person went through. I mean, it all comes together, but
Hmm.
I just feel like that's like, you know how they have the iceberg model, and it's
Right.
like surface and then what's under the water. Whew. Okay. Um, so, okay, we got 5 minutes. Where can people reach you? Where can people find you? Where can they find resources about Brace, human trafficking, any events, anything that you want to share coming up, or anything any resources
Thank
that
you
you have.
for the I got you. Thank you for the question. If you want to learn
Hmm.
more about PC Brace, or I'm not Brace, building courage and resilience to excel, you definitely should visit Brace in Pitt. But I'm going to double check that website. Give me 1 second. But I think it's
Okay.
braceinpitt.org. Um, and you learn about what the purpose of Brace is and what events that are coming up. I know that I think they just had wellness at Wildwood, so they're probably going to be doing another event shortly, but I'm not really 100% sure about what events they're going to be having. You should
Hmm.
definitely also check out if you're interested in adverse childhood experiences and learning more about that. Go to Teddy Bear Children's Advocacy Center's website or teddybear.org and learn more about childhood sexual abuse. Sign up for a Stewards of Children training that my colleague Bonnie Jean and my other colleague Kia does. Um, that when you learn about that specific childhood experience, you'll learn a lot more about child exploitation.
Hmm.
So I definitely would recommend you learn more about that. I'm all about training and learning more about things because I mean you don't know what you don't know, and I certainly didn't know. Well, I was mad all the time until I did, until you figure it out.
Right. Right.
And it could like that stuff, things like that really goes a long way. The website for Brace is www.braceinpitt.com, not org.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
definitely check that out.
Where can they
Brace
find the
typically
podcast?
has oh, thank you. You
You're
can find the
welcome.
podcast. You totally gave me a plug. I'm plugging Brace. I'm plugging Teddy Bear. Nothing about the podcast right now. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I think you can actually find it on any place you find podcasts, but specifically
Hmm.
Spotify or Apple. Please follow, subscribe, like, review, so more people will see it. Because the more people know what the resources are that are out there, the
Hmm.
happier we'll be, because that's the only reason we're really doing it is to let people know.
Yes.
And you can always find the newest episodes of PC Brace on NC Stop Human Trafficking's website at ncstophumantrafficking.org or the Pitt County Coalition Against Human Trafficking. You can find the newest episodes there at www.pccaht.org. And I want to say the Brace website also has the podcast on it at www.braceinpitt.com. I keep messing
Awesome.
that email up.
No,
Jennifer's probably going to be upset with me.
you're fine. I mess up all the time, but as long as we don't give up, we're fine. We're good.
I kept going too. I was like,
That's right.
I'm getting
You
this
got it.
website
You
out. I'm
got
getting
to.
it out.
That's the point. I love it. I love it. Melinda, I love it. I love it. That's the point. You mess up, but you never give up. I love that. For me, recovery is inspirational change moving forward. I never hold it exclusively to mental health or substance use. It's for me, it's brushing my teeth, going to telling my son I love him, going to tell my daughter I love her, going to help my dad mow the grass, hold my wife's hand. That is recovery for me, going to get some sun on my face. So with that being said, give me two things that Melinda is grateful for.
Oh my gosh, just two.
I
But
mean,
I'll give you two. I am so grateful. I'm gonna have to give you three.
okay, that's fine.
First of all, I'm so grateful for my daughter. She's 7 years old, and she is the light of my life. If she doesn't make me feel better in a day, nobody can. Like my day's gone if she's not making, but she does. She nails it every time. I don't even know how she does it. I walk in the door and she'll be like, "Mommy, you are so smart," and I'm like, I've ruined like 7 things that day. I'm like, "Thank you."
Thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Like it means so much to me.
I
And
know that's right.
then she just knows how to do it. I can't imagine what I was I don't know what I was doing 7 years ago without her. I was lost. But anyway, so my daughter, and then number two, my husband, man, he puts up with me. I'll tell you that. He does a great job though. He really, if you want to talk about somebody who knows how to, he's like, listen. Okay. I was like, was that too much? He's like, a little bit.
Just listen. Yeah.
Yeah. So, The way he handles that is certain things that I just need a level head for. I mean, he's in my exact opposite, which I
Yeah.
need. Right?
My wife is the same way. We
Thank
always say we balance each other out. Always.
he balances me out so well. I don't even know how he does it, but him, and on top of that, my mom, my dad, my younger sister, who is also my best friend, and my two brothers. I mean, my life is beautiful. I can't
Yeah.
just narrow it down to two or three. My work, the people I work with, whom I love so much, my colleagues, they've changed everything for me. So how can I not be grateful for them? I got
Awesome.
a lot of joy here, Derek. I
I
could
can
go
see it.
on.
I feel it. I feel
Yeah.
your joy, and I love it because I do too. And I feel your joy. I feel your spirit and your energy, and that's why I wanted you up here. I felt that when we did when I came on your podcast, I felt the energy and what you're trying to do for the community, the joy you have, and the gratitude that you feel, fulfillment that you get, and I'm thankful for you and
Oh,
what
I'm
you do.
thankful for you too. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you. So I want you to come back. We got a lot more stuff to talk about, to get to next time. I
Hmm.
really want to thank you for being here. It was an honor and a pleasure. I love you with all my heart. And until next time, Miss Melinda, um, you have a blessed day.
Thank you. You too. I appreciate it.
Take care. All right.
Bye.
Peace. That's what we do here at Play the Tape. Another really, really, really good interview. All the interviews are good. All the interviews are going to be good. And again, like I said, we mess up. So what? We never give up, because we don't. If no one has not told you today that they love you, I love you, we love you. With peace comes understanding. With understanding comes love. With love comes hope. With hope comes faith. With faith comes recovery. And that's what we do. People will jump in that pit with you because they know the way out. Until next time, you have a blessed day. God bless you. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.